Good day, everyone. My name is Canillo Stephanie, BS Criminology, second year, Section A. Today, I will report about Chapter 1, which is photography, definition, historical background, and principles.
Photography, definitions, historical background, and principles. Definition of terms: photography, police photography, forensic photography. Photography. Literal definition: photography is a derivative of two Greek words, phos, which means light, graphia, which means write. Photography best translates to write with light. So next, modern definition. Photography is an art or science which deals with a reproduction of image through the action of light upon synthesized materials with the aid of camera and its accessories and the chemical processes involved therein. Number 3. Technical or legal definition. Modern photography may be defined as any means for the chemical, thermal, electrical, or electronic recording of the images of scenes or objects formed by some type of radiant energy, including gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, visible light, and infrared rays. So here are the examples: chemical, thermal, overview to recording a scene, radiant energy, the gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet and infrared rays. So next of the definition of terms is police photography. Police photography is an art or science which deals with the study of the principles of photography, the preparation of photographic evidence, and its application to police work. Next is forensic photography. This is the last part of definition of terms. Forensic photography is an art or science of photographically documenting a crime scene and evidence for laboratory examination and analysis for purposes of court trial.
Historical evolution of forensic photography. So there are there are 5 historical evolution of forensic photography. The first is the basic components of photography. Next is true photography. Number 3, criminal application. Number 4, legal foundation of photographic evidence. And number 5 is criminology education. So the first that we tackle is in historical evolution of forensic photography is light. So there are the basic components of photography. There are 3 components of photography. The first one is light, second is equipment, and third is chemicals. So what is light? Light is the days of creation. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And now, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was, however, over the water. So God said, "Let there be light." And there was a light. And God So the darkness, and God called the day. So God called the darkness, uh the darkness, God called the light, it means day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day of Genesis verse 1 to 3. So next is equipment. Equipment, the portable camera obscura, or Latin for dark chamber, was used by artists or painters to get accurate perspective of natural scene and scale of their subject. And number 3 is chemical. Light sensitivity of silver nitrate and silver chloride solution was discovered and investigated. In 1800, Thomas Wedgwood and Humphrey Davy was produced a photograms. So number 2 of historical evolution of forensic photography is true photography. In 1839, is generally known as the birth year of photography. William Henry Fox Talbot explained a process he had invented, a calotype. So, William Henry Fox explained a calotype at the Royal Society of London. Again, William Henry Fox Talbot explained a process he had invented, which is calotype. So what do you mean by calotype? Calotype is a used paper with its surface fibers impregnated with the light-sensitive compounds. So, this is example. Next is Louis Jacques Daguerre made a public demonstration in Paris, which is the daguerreotype, in collaboration with Joseph Nicephore Niepce. Again, Louis Jacques Daguerre made a public demonstration in Paris, which is the daguerreotype, in collaboration with Joseph Nicephore Niepce. So, what do you mean by daguerreotype? So, it is a form an image directly on the silver surface of a metal plate. So, calotype, it is a use of paper with its surface fibers impregnated with light or sensitive compound. While daguerreotype, it is a form of image directly on the silver surface of a metal plate. It is directly form of an image. That is daguerreotype. Next is with Talbot's calotype, the fixation was only partial, while daguerre's or daguerreotypes image were made permanent with the use of hypo. So that's why daguerreotype, it is a image directly, while calotype, it is a use of paper with its surface fiber. Next is in 1848, Abel Niepce de Saint Victor introduced a process of negatives on glass using albumen or egg white as a binding medium. So, um, Abel used Abel using album with egg white. Egg white. Next is in 1850, Louis Desiree Blanquart Evard. It is introduced a printing paper coated with albumen to achieve a glossy surface. So Louis, it is coated with the album to achieve glossy surface. Next is in 1851, Frederick Scott Archer. It is a published a wet place. It is a process when collodion. Collodion means that a viscous liquid that dries to a too flexible and transparent film replace albumen. So Frederick, it is he introduced a printing paper coated with albumen to achieve a glossy surface. Next is 1851. Frederick published a wet place. It is a process when collodion. So what do you mean by collodion? Collodion is a viscous liquid that dries to though flexible and transparent film replace albumen. Next is in 1885, gelatin emulsion printing paper was commercially introduced base film in 1889. So gelatin emulsion, it is printing paper was commercially introduced base film in 1889. During this time, the camera were crude. The lenses could not form a true image, and the sensitive materials required long exposures and could not reproduce colors in shades of gray. So, during this time, the camera were crude. The lenses could not form of true image, and the materials required long exposures and could not reproduce colors in shades of gray. It was in 1856 when John Herschel coined the word photography. So this time John Herschel coined the word photography. This is what John Herschel named the word photography. So in 1861, James Clerk Maxwell were introduced. In 1890, it is a full corrected lenses were introduced. 1906, a plate was placed on the market that could reproduce all colors, equivalent shades of gray. 1907, Lumiere color process was introduced. A panchromatic film was used but with a blue, green, and red filter. 1914, U.S. Eastman Kodak made a color subtractive process called Kodak CRIM. In 1935, color process came out together with electronic flash. 1947, Edwin H. Land introduced for a Polaroid, the one step of photography. Again, Edwin Land introduced Polaroid, or it is a one step of photography. In 1960, laser was invented, making possible holograms, three-dimensional pictures. So there are examples. In 1988, the arrival of true digital cameras. 1988, the arrival of true digital cameras. The first true digital cameras that recorded images as a computerized file was likely the Fuji DS1P of 1988. So this is the first camera recorded, which is Fuji DS1P of 1988, which recorded to a 16 MB international memory card that used a battery to keep the data in memory. This camera was never marketed to keep the data in memory. This camera was never marketed in the United States of America or USA. This first commercially available digital camera was the 1992 Kodak DCS-100. It is used a 1.3 megapixel sensor and was priced at 13 million US dollar. The first consumer of camera with a liquid crystal display or LCD on the back was the Casio QB10 in 1995, and the first camera to use compact flash was the Kodak DC-25 in 1996. In 1999, the Nikon D1A 2.74 megapixel camera was the first digital SLR with a price of under 6 million US dollar. This camera also used a Nikon F mount or Nikon F mount lenses, which mean that film-based photograph or photographers could use the same lenses they already know or own. In 2003, Canon introduced the 300D camera, also known as a digital reveal, a 6 megapixel, the first DSLR, priced under 1,000 US dollar to a consumers. So the third historical evolution of forensic photography. Next is number 3 is criminal application. The history of forensic science and criminal investigation is both rich and exciting. The discoveries and observation of our predecessors is likewise surprising and comforting. The great men and women who paved a path of enlightenment in crime investigation continue to teach us long. So this is figure number 2, the bashful mother, a model in 1873. This is the history of forensic science and criminal investigation. It is both rich and exciting. After their deaths, these are the aspirations that we should aspire to endow. We are fortunate to work in a profession with a strong foundation and a bright and seemingly endless future. By Thomas Wolfer Adler, the editor of the scene. So, Thomas Wolfer Adler He is the editor of the same. In 1854, an Englishman, Maddox, developed a dry plate photography eclipsing the Gears with plate on 10 method. This is made practical the photography of images for person records. In 1859, in the United States, one of the earliest applied forensic science was in photography. It was to demonstrate evidence in California case. Enlarged photographs of signature was presented in court case involving forgery. That is 1859. In 1864, Odell Birch first advocated the use of photography for the identification of criminals and the documentation of evidence and crime scenes. Early photographs of accused and arrested person were beautifully posed, an example of the Victorian photographers of 20 to 30 years. It is later, every major police force in England and the United States has rugues galleries, or it is full place profile and fully body shots. Again, rugues galleries, it is a full face profile and fully body shot. So in Europe and the United States had rugues gallery. So Europe, had a rugues gallery. It is a photographs of criminals. He became an integral part almost all police departments. In 1882, Alphonse Bertillon, who initiated anthropometric measurement. So Alton Bertillon, he is the one who initiated the anthropometric measurement. It is a personal identification, was also involved in a various means of the documentation by photography, which developed into a fine science for criminalistic when he photographed crime scenes, and it is formulated a technique of contact photography to demonstrate erasures on documents. To this, in 1932, Dr. R.A. Oris, a German scientist trained in chemistry and physics at Lausanne University in Switzerland, he is contribute heavily to the use of photography in forensic science. Also, he is established the world's earliest crime laboratory that serves the academic community and the Swiss of police. His interests included photography of crime scenes, corpse, and blood stains. It is also he made a trip to Brazil in 1913, where his experience in criminalistics was presented to the Western Hemisphere for the first time. In 1910, Victor Baltazar developed a method of photographic comparison of bullets and cartridge cases, which is an early foundation of a field of ballistics. Next is Victor Baltazar, professor of forensic medicine. Again, Victor Baltazar, He is the professor of forensic medicine at Sorbonne. He used photographic enlargement of bullets and cartridge cases to determine weapon type and was among the first to attempt to individualize a bullet of a hip weapon. So next is the legal foundation of photographic evidence. There are one, two. There are two legal foundation of photographic evidence. The first one is for black and white photographs. Second is for color photographs. So let's define in 1859, the daguerreotype was used in civil case. Leo versus in United States 23 Ward 515 to decide on the authenticity of photographs in comparing signatures. In 1874, in criminal case, introducing photographs as identification evidence under Zook versus Commonwealth 76 in page 340. So for colors photograph in 1943 civil litigations or Green versus City and County of Denver 3 color 390 and 140 P2 D 277 involving color photography of spoiled meat in violation of health ordinance prohibiting the sale of putrid meat to the public. So, in 1960, in criminal case State versus County, 157 Commonwealth or 251 8.2D, 81 showing a graphic one of the victim. So, the last part of a historical evolution of forensic photography is criminology education. So what are the five historical evolution of forensic photography? Again, the basic components of photography. Next, number 2, true photography. Number 3, criminal application. Number 4, the legal foundation of photographic evidence. And the lastly is criminology education. So there are 5. Criminology education. In 1902, Dr. R.A. Rees, he is a professor at the University at Lausanne, Switzerland, set up one at the first academic curricular in forensic science. His forensic photography department grew into Lausanne Institute of Police Science. So Dr. Rees, he is the professor of University of Lausanne in Switzerland. He is the first academic curricular in forensic science. Next is in 1950, August Vollmer. He is the chief of police of Berkeley, California. Again, August Vollmer. He is the chief of police Berkeley in California. He is established the School of Criminology at the University of California, Berkeley. So, August Vollmer, he is established the School of Criminology. He is also a chief of police of Berkeley in California. So, and he is also full Kirk. He is presided of the major of criminalistic within the school. In 1954, in the Philippines, the school which pioneered criminology education is the Florida Education Institution, now the Philippine College of Criminology in 641 Sales Street, Santa Cruz, Manila. Again, in 1944, the school which pioneered criminology education is the Florida Educational Institution, now in the Philippine College of Criminology at the 641 Sales in Street, Santa Cruz, Manila. So lastly, the principles of photography. So what is the principles of photography? So this is the different authors of photography books have different approach in explaining the principles of photography, but to our mind, the one expounded by attorney Avelino Aquino in his book of police photography. So there are many authors of forensic photography or police photography. It is, what do you mean by police photography? It is the practice, or it is the principles and practice that he is the best articulated. A photograph is the mechanical and chemical result of a photography. It is to produce a photograph that light is needed aside from synthesized materials. Lights are reflected or rejected by subject much or must reach the synthesized materials, while all others lights must be excluded. So the exclusion of full or all unwanted and unnecessary lights is achieved by exclusion, or by placing the synthesized materials inside a camera. The amount of light and the synthesized material after exposure, it is not immediately visible in our eyes. To make the formed image visible, it must undergo the development process. The visual effect that results from the chemical processing is dependent on the quality of the exposing light. More light yield an opaque or black shade on the synthesized materials after development, or too little will produce a transparent or wild shade. It is the varying of gray will finally form the complete image. So that is the principles of photography. Again, there are 5 historical evolution of forensic photography. The first one is the basic components of photography. Next is true photography. Number 3 is criminal application. Number 4 is legal foundation of photographic evidence. And the lastly is the criminology education. Hope so that's all. And there are the examples of definition or historical background of forensic photography. So I will give example, and I will give the summary of about chapter 1. So again, thank you and hope you will understand my report.